compressor on there. They may have put some, reverb and maybe a little bit of this or that. But for the most part, that's his fucking voice. Today, you don't even have to be that good. Like, you could take, oh, he's out of key right there. That's all right. Whoop, push it right back in. No problem.
It's true. Like, auto-tune can do that, but I'm going to argue that you never had to be a good singer. Like, think of all of the singers throughout history who were just mediocre singers at best. Lemmy is not a great singer. Lemmy is a mediocre singer who could really write music that carried his voice, which is really the key to a lot of great music, right?
But rock and roll singing wasn't meant to be a melodic thing, like all singing pretty much is a melodic thing. Not saying that there aren't melodic singers in rock and roll, but like you said, guys like Lemmy, or let's say, what the fuck's his name from AC/DC?
Brian Johnson.
Who died? The first
Bon
guy,
Scott.
the original guy, right?
Bon Scott,
right?
Bon Scott, yeah.
So those guys' voices were, they were singing, right, and they had to be somewhat melodic, but for the most part, those voices were just another instrument, like a guitar, right?
Well, yeah.
It was purveying a message. They were vocally purveying a message, but the voice was also purveying it in a way like a keyboard or a heavy, they were pushing it out there. So, technically they would not be classified as some great singer, but
and I'm just saying that throughout rock and metal music, you have both sides of that spectrum. You have the folks that are you have the Freddie Mercurys, the Rob Halfords, and the Bruce Dickinsons, and then you have the Lemmys, and you have the Ozzies. Ozzy's not a phenomenal singer.
No.
But I mean,
like, carry a tune, right? But then also, even lower than that, you got bands like just dirty, grimy metal. Say like a band like Crowbar, where it's just sludgy, and there isn't, they're not even trying to be good singers. They're just like kind of,
Yeah, I mean, Tom Araya was what, Seasons in the Abyss before they introduced any sort of melody to they had melody. One of the things that I loved about Slayer is that the singing, despite being this like borderline scream singing, he always kept the melody with it, unlike Death, that lost the melody and just kind of was monotone with the rest of the music happening around it.
Yeah.
But like, so yeah, you always have had the great sing, and which is funny, the guy from Death also can fucking sing, which is evident on the last song of their last album when they cover Painkiller and he nails Rob Halford, but you always have those bands that are built around a personality and the bands that are built around a sound. And then you have a lot of those bands that are built around the crux of those two things, or you have that personality that guides the sound. I keep coming back to Lemmy because Lemmy could sing beautifully, but he wasn't a good singer. Think of like the song 1916. It's a beautiful, beautiful song, but it's not a good singer. He just sang well. If and I put myself in that category. I'm not a great singer. I can sing where I'm trying to sing. I write the music to be exactly what I can sing, so that I do it.
Okay, so Steve's taking a dab. So we kind of came into this show, started on a conversation that doesn't actually have to do with the topic of the show, but that's what'll happen when you get together and start doing a pre-show. What we were kind of talking about before is, what I was saying is I want to be careful how I say this. Electronic dance music is music. It is very much not my style of music. I don't care for it. But to me, it doesn't take the skills,
musicianship.
It doesn't take the musical proficiency. I mean, maybe that's what I'm trying to say, to work the computer as it does to say, learn to play the instruments and get good at it. Steve is saying bullshit on that and coming to the defense of the computer geeks and all that. Nothing wrong with that. And with well-reasoned argument, which I should have hit record at the beginning of the show. And then we're kind of going off. So if anybody kind of tuned in and going, what the fuck are they talking about? That's where that's going on. And I think we could actually have that argument at another, or not an argument, just a great discussion on it later.
Yeah.
But we're sitting here with Stony Rockefeller. You know him, you love him, you see him around the cannabis community. He rocks out, drummer with Catachronic. And how you doing, Stony?
Oh, you know, in the car driving as always. So
seems like
most people know that.
So
why not?
Yeah. So tonight's show, we want to talk about like what is metal? Are they metal? It's like the meaning of metal almost seems to have changed over years, right? And then like you got bands, say Van Halen, because they're the first thing that comes to my mind. Back in the day, they probably might have been considered metal, or they're on the cusp, right? And now they definitely be hard rock. And a bunch of other bands from around that era, that is similar thing. And another something like other offshoots, like hardcore punk rock, right? Is that's pretty close to metal, and that I kind of learned about that stuff in around the same groups, because we didn't have defined groups and genres like that, where when I grew up it was just kind of heavier it isn't sort of thing, and if it was heavy it was considered metal. So when I put this one to Steve at some point in time in the last week, he thought, yeah, that's a fucking great idea. And here's a good one. And Stony, we started talking about this, I think it was Friday pre-show, before we started on one of our usual shows there. And you were getting pretty animated in there too. You got a band like, say, Black Sabbath. We might as well start there. You might even be able to go farther back with Blue Cheer and say, okay, these are the bands that maybe started metal. There's not a lot of question behind that. It's just how far back do you want to go to see who is the actual original Black Sabbath there? Are they actually metal though? I
don't think so, personally. I think they are the archetypes of metal. All right, so when I was growing up, so these guys were still together, right? So I mean, I'm old enough to remember. I was old enough. Fuck, I remember the day getting the brand new Van Halen album. They were not metal. I had UFO, Rush, 2112 came out. All that shit came out in like 77, 78, right? And none of that shit was metal, because there was no such. Where I grew up in Chicago, nobody knew what metal was. Metal became a word when bands like Iron Maiden started thriving in the early 80s, when we got a whiff of that shit. And then Judas Priest kind of got lumped in with them, even though we were listening to Judas Priest before them. We also listened to Scorpions, but we never considered the Scorpions to be heavy metal, even though now they are heavy metal. Van Halen's heavy metal. We never considered Van Halen heavy metal, at least where I'm from, all right? Those guys were not heavy metal. It was Black Sabbath was heavy, you know, Blue Cheer, like you said. It was, you know, when we discovered that stuff, shit, when I was like 7 or whatever, I think, going through my cousin's stuff, you know, pulling out the Black Sabbath album and just going, that's scary, man. That's really scary. I got to listen to that again. It's scaring the fuck out of me, you know? And then your mom and dad hear it, and then that was it. And then they saw the album. My mom, it's all she had to see was the upside down crosses and the devil, and fuck me, that album was gone. So, you know, I don't know, guys. I mean, I think it all comes down to what you want it to be, you know? I mean, it's art, right? And it's all subjective. It's all personal perspective, and it's all on what it makes you feel. So if you feel that Van Halen's metal, I mean, I wouldn't fight you on it, but my personal stance is just, when they came out, they were not heavy metal. You know, heavy metal to us were guys that came out in the stretch pants and spiked fucking wristbands. And, you know, heavy metal is just, to me, like punk attitude mixed in with fucking some heavy fucking Black Sabbath rock with fucking faster BPMs, you know.
Well, and like, what's funny is that as I'm thinking about this, and we think about like classic rock and rock music and rock versus metal, and if you look up the definition of metal, it's going to tell you that it's a subgenre of rock. The first thing is that all metal is rock, but not all rock is metal. Is really where the starting point of the conversation by definition. Like if you go on Wikipedia or if you look up the definition of heavy metal, it says it's a genre, it's a form of rock music. And then you think about like classic rock, but we never really talk about classic metal, right? Like those bands, and actually Hunter Gatherer on Cannabuzz, who comes to morning metal a lot, has a great name for a lot of those early bands, and it's proto metal. You know, it's that it's like the UFO and Black Sabbath, even, that like metal wasn't quite a thing yet, and they were developing this new kind of music, which now you have these doom metal bands that are basically trying to mimic those sounds of those original metal bands, you know. And so and I really feel like here in America, metal music, I always talk about hearing about Iron Maiden when I was like 9, and that really was what metal music was. Like that new wave of British heavy metal, I feel, was what really brought metal to the United States. And then when it did, along with it came the influence of, you know, then you have like, oh, well, like you mentioned, the Scorpions. And by the time the new wave of British heavy metal hit, the Scorpions had already moved into a much more metal sound. You know, by their third album, they were making the same music, you know, the same genre of music as Priest and Maiden, you know. And you had those other like German bands like Halloween that came out of there. So then you have all of this, and you have all of these bands out in San Francisco that are like, hey, let's turn this up a notch and make it a little faster. And you know, so like I feel like looking backward, a lot of those bands, even Priest's first album doesn't feel very metal, but like I can't see it as anything but a metal album, you know? Like
See, I think the Scorpions are an easy one, or not easy, interesting one to me, is because for some reason I just like, and I love the Scorpions, Steve, you know that, big fan, but for some reason I have a hard time considering the metal almost more like a hard rock band. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm asking this stuff, because like I grew up I was born in 1981. So I grew up kind of when Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses, and all those bands were starting to blow up. So that was heavy metal to me growing up when I was a kid, right? But now I don't consider Def Leppard or Guns N' Roses really to be heavy metal, although it's like they definitely have their place there. And like, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm not saying like, hey, we have to make a list and Def Leppard used to be metal and fuck them. They're not metal anymore, so they're gone. I just, you know, it's just an interesting discussion on people's opinions on where things lie.
And GNR is an interesting one too, right? Because I really feel like Appetite's a metal album. You know, Appetite's a metal album. Use Your Illusion is a hard rock album with some metal songs. Like, I mean, there's definitely metal tunes on there, and then you have songs like Estranged that really, really kind of, they have it has some of the dark themes. It has the epic song changes and the tempo changes and everything, but it's still not quite hitting that metal, you know, so there's a lot of stuff that's even on the cusp, but like you go from having like a metal album with a couple rock songs to making rock albums with metal songs. That's really how I see GNR play out. And like, my thing with Def Leppard is they were heavy metal. They were part of the new wave of British heavy metal when they came out. And I really feel like the fact that the definition over time evolved, I don't see how you take away that title from somebody, which is why I really think what we need is a title like classic metal. Like there really is a classic metal, and that's where and that's where Def Leppard belongs. You know, they belong on this, you know, and those, you know, even a lot of the other glam metal bands that were like glam metal at the time, but then during the shift in metal tones and qualities, you know, they got left behind.
And that's one of those, that's that shift. One of those things is where, I'm trying to get at, because you look at like with these 80s bands, these glam metal bands, they lived by their guitars. They're electric guitars, most of them, and they get the squeals and all that shit going on. But then, like, as stuff evolved into, like, you have the more heavy distorted stuff of like death metal, and then new metal and all that is stuff carries on. It's more down tuned and just not high and bright. And so it's like, okay, this at one point in time was heavy. It was heavier than what had come before. But then you see now, like you know, the intro, "Welcome to the Jungle," fucking that was heavy at one point in time. And now you look at that compared to, say, fucking Death Walking Terror by Cannibal Corpse, and now you might as well be comparing fucking Sweet Child of Mine to Death Walking Terror, because it's just like, you know, Welcome to the Jungle, just it's not heavy in comparison. So I like the idea of a classic metal maybe subgenre, and I could easily throw a band like the Scorpions in there, where because they definitely have the chops, man. Like the musical skills is like fucking phenomenal.
I would say those bands would be a bridge. I don't know if I would say classic metal. I would put like Iron Maiden in as classic metal, but I would say Scorpions, stuff like bands like those, like Def Leppard, and I would even kind of see more of classic metal. But Scorpions, Def Leppard, those guys were more of a bridge between the two genres, I think, because at one point Def Leppard was more of a metal sound, and then they kind of flipped into a heavier rock sound, and then they went kind of poppy rock, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As time went on, they chased the money, right?
Well, they did, and one of my arguments, and this is coming from a guy that's hated Def Leppard entirely all along, but the one thing I'll say is that poppy sound, that changed the poppy sound, I believe, a lot of it came out of necessity because they needed the electronic drum set. You know, when he lost his arm and they went to the electronic drums, and then it just altered the sound of the music because they didn't have the technology that they do today to make it sound like a drum kit, you know?
Right.
And so, like, I feel like that, you know, and then also you put this spotlight on this guy who's now drumming with one arm. So it's like, wow, that's also kind of a novelty. They get shoved into this other place. Now they start making money and they keep writing music right in that same genre. Sure. I'm not, and at the same time, I'm not faulting anybody for making money off their music either, you know?
If that's what they want to do, that's fine. Hey, they're still doing what they love to do. So kudos to them, right? But I do like the GNR thing, because that's an interesting, that's a very, that was a very poignant time in my life when that band came out. Mm-hmm. I was playing the heavy metal shit. I was playing more, not heavy metal, but more of the pop rock shit, you know. What do you call Poison and shit like that. I couldn't stand it, and I was begging, we got to figure something out, man. Let's go back to the 70s and dig up and pick up where those fuckers left off before they changed the fucking disco. And let's fucking continue out the hard shit, right? Nobody wanted to do it because you weren't going to get a gig, right? So then GNR came out, and I brought it to I remember bringing it to band practice, playing it for these guys, going, dude, it's a Les Paul and a wah pedal. When was the last time you heard that? These guys are going to be fucking huge. I'm telling you, this is the sound, not exactly that I wanted, but totally in the direction. And I go, they're going to open up a door for a whole new thing. And everyone's, fuck, they'll be dead in a fucking month and blah, blah. They sound like this band. And then I'm like, all right, man. That's when I quit, sold my drums, turned off fucking rock music, and for 5-6 years, especially once grunge hit, then I wanted to put a bullet in my head, because had I still had my drums, still been playing with aspirations, I probably would have went out west up there and probably would have gotten into the band, right? Because that's where my head was at. But when I quit, and that was it, and then when I heard fucking all these bands coming through, Nirvana and whatnot, then I was like, oh, fuck, man, told you, assholes. But by then I was well on my way of becoming a professional electrician and didn't have time for that music. So I listened to Bach and Beethoven and drove everybody on the job site fucking nuts for years. I refused to listen to rock music. I just didn't want to hear it. So I shut myself off. So now I'm going through and rediscovering all this shit. It's kind of cool.
See, GNR Appetite came out when I was in, I think, like 6th grade. The first time I remember them being popular, it was like 6th grade, and people were listening to them and Poison, like you said, and Def Leppard and whatnot, like that like poppy, the stuff that was, you know, the glam metal. Really, it was like the early glam metal. And then and I remember asking, like, what should I listen to? And someone said, like, go get this Poison album. And I was like, all right, whatever. And I never did. And then eventually, a couple years later, I ended up hearing Guns N' Roses and just getting really into them. But like, it was the fact that that band did so much in really two and a half albums. Well, really like 3 albums, right? Like Appetite, and then you had their demo album along with 5 acoustic songs, and they said, this is our 2nd album. And then they did Use Your Illusion. And then, and I mean, that was their original body of work. And think about the influence that had. And like you said, when grunge came along, because like I was into the grunge, like I was knee deep in grunge music when it came out, especially Pearl Jam and Nirvana. Like I have a distinct memory of my friends and I all standing in my living room singing Alive and like trying to hit the harmonies of Wood by Alice in Chains, and like, you know,
I can picture that too. I can see myself trying to sing Man in the Box, because to me, the way the chorus escalates each time on that song, and when he finally hits the 3rd chorus and he's just like, burn, I could never come close to duplicating it. That's as close as I'll do on the show. I'll spare you the bleeding ears. But to me, that is probably one of the finest examples of singing ever right there.
And I'll say this, if you look up grunge music, it is going to tell you grunge is a subgenre of metal.
Right.
I mean, so right there, even though you don't think of a band like Nirvana as metal, grunge is a metal subgenre. And
I
so
would say grunge sounds has more metal in it than Scorpions or Def Leppard, even their very first albums. I mean, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, those guys are way heavier, man. And yet these guys are considered not metal, because I heard there was a lot of problems with Soundgarden being pushed into the metal arena, but metal back then, you know, was more Slayer, Speed, and, you know, shit like that.
I would consider Soundgarden and Alice in Chains metal before I would rock and roll personally. But what you were just mentioned, Steve, I want to touch on this before I lose it, about grunge being a subgenre of metal. That just kind of was this like a poof, kind of my brain just exploded moment. Because then that explains why Alice in Chains is metal to me. That explains why Soundgarden is metal to me. And that explains why a band like Pearl Jam and Nirvana, while they do have their heavy moments, are not really full on metal, right? They kind of fringe on it a little bit.
Well, but here's the thing, because we talked about is punk metal, and Nirvana is much more bordering on a punk band, right?
Yeah.
It's much more on that punk side.
Yeah.
So you have like that punk metal, which I really feel like a lot of, especially old punks, were like, we're not metal, and old metal were like, we're not punk, you know. But like, there are too many similarities and crossovers, and then you have the whole band of bad brains that's like, fuck you, or both.
Yeah.
Like, but like, and so Nirvana does have that more punk feel, and you know, Pearl Jam really drew. I mean, they kind of go in and out of their heavy moments, right? Because you have like Spin the Black Circle, and you have like Even Flow, but then you also have Black, and you also have, you know, like, and they also would bring an element of acoustic instruments to metal, you know, more than you see. But
well, their music was, their songs are a lot. Most of them are like ballads, you know, rock ballads.
But a lot, like, yeah.
You know, like a Motley Crue, even a lot of their shit, but just at a different spin, a different sound. But you know, these guys just went back, and sort of like in the '80s and shit, everything started getting just sounding so perfect, and everything sounded the same. And I feel like it's the same now with the computers and shit, that everything's too perfect. And I'll just give you an example. My 11-year-old, because now she's really starting to get into music, and I let her, you know, she's got her whatever she wants to listen to, and I introduce her to all kinds of shit. And even like the new metal that's out now, the radio station out by me. So we were listening to some of that. I'm like, you like this? And she's like, yeah, you know, it's not bad. And we were listening to a couple of tunes, and then she just turned to me and said, you know, I kind of like it, but I like the older stuff, because the older stuff sounds more real. I said, what do you mean it sounds more real? It's just, this stuff just sounds like it's just, like everything's just too like perfect, right? And I okay.
Yeah,
that's the problem I have, right? I can't stand. I still, even for the old music, right? Even 70s shit, 80s. I was always a live album guy, man. You know, you could place down a studio album and let me listen to it, and I could like it or whatever, and be like, great. But my final judgment on whatever I heard would be, let me hear the live version of that.
Well, I've always been the kind of person where if I get into a new band and they've got a fair size catalog, I'll go look for a live album, because A, it's going to be kind of like a greatest hits, because, you know, they're going to want to be playing their best stuff at a show. And B, if, you know, you just want to see if they're killing it live. I used to like the parts on songs where the singer would talk in between songs and stuff like that, and just make it a little bit different than what you would hear on the studio album when you do go get that. So yeah, I'm with you on checking out live albums.
Yeah, well, you know what? Because you know, I can just tell you, just by playing, you know, and making our own songs, that there's many songs that we've recorded that when we play them live, they're way fucking different. They're probably, most of them are faster. You know, that's usually what happens. Stuff, you know, you go into the studio and you're like, oh man, we got to slow it down, you know, because it doesn't maybe sound exactly right. But when you're live doing it,
well,
there's a whole different dynamic.
Do you play to a click when you're in the studio? No. Because I could never play to a click, and that's one of my biggest troubles with trying to record myself without a whole band with me. You know, like I trying to like layer it like that. But when I went into the studio, I actually hired a drummer specifically because because when I play the drums, I can't play to a click. I've never been able to.
Yeah. I could actually play. I have. I guess for me, all right, so I learned by playing along with albums. So basically, I'm listening to a click, or I'm listening to that snare drum snap every fucking time, or whatever I'm cueing in on to keep the time, you know, whatever it's going.
Yeah, I pretty much, that's how I learned. Like, I took lessons for like
it is
5
different,
minutes.
Though.
Yeah. Yeah, I took lessons for like 5 minutes in high school, and then I sat there, and it was like the Beatles, it was Nevermind, it was Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusion. Those are the albums that taught me how to play the drums. Like, yeah, like I could sit right now at my drum set and play Sweet Child of Mine, no, you know, beat for beat on a drum kit, but I can't do a lot of like fancy stuff on it. And if I were to just sit down and if I were to record with a band right now and I wanted to play the drums, I'd do it live and not worry about a click. But if I'm gonna try to record myself and do all of the instruments, like I don't know how I can do that without playing to a click and still be able to sync everything up.
Right. No, you'd have to, because
Yeah.
you know, you got nothing to base
anchor
off
it.
of, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Even if I try to lay down the drums first, then I have to make sure I got the entire song down in one take,
Right.
you know. So it's
Yeah, I got to
drums.
feel it. You know, it's fuckery being a drummer, because you do it. I'm been blessed with natural talent. Okay, the shit just comes easy to me. I don't know. You know, it's just like anybody else. There's people that could draw like a motherfucker, you know, and they, without effort, they just know how to do it, right? And
Yeah,
so just playing.
Gotcha.
I got a pretty good clock on me, so you know, a lot of times too, I would practice where I'll be playing with a song, and someone will be there listening, and I'll make them like turn the song off, or just turn the volume all the way down, and I'll just keep playing. And then whenever they want to cue back in the song, they can cue it in whenever they want. Like, I'm not going to know when they're going to shut it off, and I'm not going to know when they're going to turn it on, just to see if I could keep along, you know.
Yeah.
So just by doing that and practicing that, you know, that helped really reinforce my timing, you know. So if I'm going along with the band and I'm clicked, and you turn off the music, and I can keep going, and then you turn it back on, I'm still right on.
It's
a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, when I practice my bass, I use a click every time now. That when I use a metronome to practice my bass, because I feel like that's where I really need, you know, that because I'm not really able to do it on the drums and have always struggled with it, I try to do it more on the bass, you know. By the way, we are about halfway through this show. If we wanted to drop some shout outs, I didn't actually see the chat, if there's anyone in the chat.
It's about that time. All right. So one of the things we want to do on this show is the mid-show shout out. So hanging out with us in the live chat, we got the local grow guy, Blue Kiss Gardens, and looks like me. It's all Supreme Grape and DPO and old fashioned coffee pot hanging out in there. Cheers, everyone. And while we're at it, we got some people on Patreon that are awesome, stellar people that help grease the wheels, keep things turning around here. And they help with donations every month. So Patreon contributors, we've got South Nelson Farms, Tara Love, 420 Green Goddess, Eric Kaler, we've got Astro Charlie, Colton Bridge, G-Bay Genetics, Papa Z, Lobster Bush. We got Paula, PJ Lloyd, Opie, Dave's not here, Uncle Rick, BC Stoner Mom, Stony, you the man, brother, Crazy Pop Mom, Raider, Dank Vader, and Hypothetical Genetics. If you didn't know, now you know. Hypothetical Genetics is an official sponsor of Caribou Heart TV. His alleviating 1-to-1 ratio auto flowers. They've been helping us out, get our minds straight, and help those aches and pains that you get with the everyday grind of life. Check him out on Instagram or on Cannabis. That's Hypothetical Gardener, I believe. And he'll hook you up, man. His shit works. We stand behind his product as a channel and a community. Hype, we love you, brother. And I
got 3 of his stuff that I grew outside. Actually, I just unfortunately Bud Rot got to it. We had some really crazy humid weather, and I was in Luzerne. That was a fucking coming back to that mess. Came back to 3 fucking plants that had Bud Rot that were just about finished up, and then I had one plant that was supposed to be a femme, turned out to be a male, and pollinated my other plant. So yeah, a lot of fuckery on that weekend.
Yeah. And then one other thing I want to bring attention to on the Friday night show that we do regularly. We started talking about the idea of putting a poll up somewhere, wondering about the amount of our watchers that have dealt or suffered with addiction issues at some point in time in their lives, whether it be you're still struggling with that beast or you've gotten over it, but you know, that was a point at one point in time in your life. And it seems like an overwhelming majority of people that we've polled have said have had struggled with addiction issues at some point in time. So on this morning's Wake and Bake show, we started batting around the idea of should we maybe do come up with like sort of I don't want to use the word therapy, but like a support group for people struggling with addiction and recovery issues. So on our YouTube channel here, we put up some questionnaires like would you like to see us start a new show up? And we're getting a lot of yeses on that. And then the other things for something like that is what day of the week works best. And it seems like Mondays and Saturdays are starting to get it. What might be work best for that. If anyone watching this, if you have or you still struggle with addiction and recovery issues, we'd like to hear from you. I put up similar posts on my Instagram page and on my Canvas, just asking. It's what we're thinking of. It'll be similar environment to our Friday night shit shows where everybody's invited, everybody's welcome to participate. But please be aware that this is actually 100% aimed at addiction and recovery discussion. It's people need help, and that's what we're here for. There seems to be quite a few people are very interested in this. So I just want to draw attention to that and, let us know what you think, people. And with that, I think let's get back to the fun stuff. Let's talk music again, because music.
Yeah, I've only got like a minute or two, guys. I'm gonna have to cut loose. I apologize, but
fair enough, brother.
One last point I want to make about the Scorpions and why the Scorpions, to me, land in a metal category. Because like I totally hear why they wouldn't. Like I totally get that. I remember them coming. I remember when the album with Winds of Change came out, and they that was a big like time for them in the US. And to me, they were presented as, oh, here's a German metal band. Here's a German metal band. That's how they were presented to me. Now, flash forward to now, who is their drummer?
Mickey D.
Mickey D.
Why I was gonna say D. Snyder. I can't fucking believe that.
But
is he really? He's their drummer now?
He is their drummer. So would Mickey D play in a band that's not a metal band? Nah.
Oh, I would. I'm Scorpions again. Like I said in the very beginning and shit. And you guys are a little bit younger than me, so I get it. So like when you guys were coming in to high school, whatnot, all this shit was already labeled metal.
Right.
I said, metal was until Iron Maiden came. And we didn't really know about Iron Maiden. Didn't make it big here until their Number of the Beast album. That's really fucking.
Yeah.
Then everybody went back and holy shit, wait a minute, there was a whole nother singer and there was a different drummer even at one point. And
so, that was Peace of Mind was when they switched drummers. It was Clive Burr for the first 3 albums.
Yeah.
And then after Number of the Beast, he got fired and they brought in Nico McBrien.
Right.
I think I've developed one of my most controversial Iron Maiden opinions, and I haven't said this out loud to anybody yet.
All right,
this is what I believe is my most controversial Iron Maiden opinion. Iron Maiden's songwriting suffered more from the loss of Adrian Smith than the loss of Bruce Dickinson. Now, I'm not talking about their sound. I'm talking about their songwriting. They were not writing as well without Adrian Smith.
I thought Steve Harris wrote most of the songs, didn't he?
So Steve Harris is like the first album, all Steve Harris. Second album, mostly Steve Harris. And he's the guy that runs the show, right? In fact, since they got back together, so like, if I'm correct, Virtual 11, that second album with Blaze Bayley, was the last album with songs that were written only by Steve Harris. He actually kind of took a step back and was less of like the main songwriter and was more of like a director, or he'd contribute lyrics and stuff like that from Brave New World up until the current album Stratego, which he contributed heavily to. But those early albums, from Number of the Beast through Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, right? and all the way through Virtual 11, they were all contributing to the songwriting. A lot of the big singles, those were Adrian Smith, right? The Trooper, Wasted Years, Flight of Icarus is Dickinson Smith. But Smith had his hands over most of the singles, a lot of their shorter songs, and was just, he really was like, I feel like after he left, you lose a lot of the cool riffs and a lot of the cool, like, you know, the little incidental guitar riffs that you would get on their other albums, that I really feel like him not being there for those 4 albums, that's when the songwriting suffered the most. Everyone sees Bruce Dickinson come back and they come back together with this brilliant album of Brave New World, but Smith was there too. And Smith was writing Wicker Man, right? Like Smith wrote fucking Passchendaele, and he wrote Writing on the Wall, their current single. Dude is like, and don't get me wrong, the current album, the best songs on the album are Steve Harris's songs. But like I said, he had taken a back seat because for those 4 albums, he was writing the best songs and they weren't really catching the way that everything up until then was. That element of losing Adrian Smith, No Prayer for the Dying isn't a great album compared to, I'll always say, being my least favorite Maiden album is like being my least favorite ice cream, right? Like I still fucking love it. But No Prayer for the Dying, not a great album compared to Seventh Son of the Seventh Son that they just released a couple of years earlier. And Fear of the Dark, better than No Prayer for the Dying, but still not anywhere near the first 7 albums. And it's not until Brave New World and Adrian Smith comes back that they are back on top of it. There's just some gems in there.
You said Fear of the Dark, and I want to hit back. Yeah.
I want to say one thing about Fear of the Dark. Your favorite version of Fear of the Dark is after the return of Adrian Smith.
Yep.
Was that what you were going to say?
No, but I was going to be, but you are 100% correct. I was going to say, get back to Stony's talk about how he's a live show guy because he likes that imperfection and whatnot, a human element to it. The studio version of Fear of the Dark, to me, is very forgettable. It's not great, but once you add that live element on it, off the version that's on the Best of the Beast Greatest Hits album, that is just like, and you also need to be clear, that's the version I heard first. So I heard the good version of it, knew that for years. And then when I finally heard the studio version, and to me, it was just so lacking. Like I don't want to necessarily knock it because it is a great song. You hear me just yammering on about the live version. It's the same fucking song. It's just played live, right?
Right. It feels different, right? I mean, one of the things about Iron Maiden is that they write songs for their fans, right? They write songs that they're going to connect with their fans, and they put in those pieces like that intro is like. That whole like, well,
you know that's gonna get played live, like
and I'm gonna be there. I got.
Tickets. Yeah, you got your tickets, didn't you?
I've got my tickets.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, where is that? Are they playing in Philly or do you got to travel?
Jersey. I'm going up to Newark, New Jersey. Yeah.
Nice.
How far of a drive is that for you?
Couple hours, about 2 hours.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
No, not too bad. And weed is legal in New Jersey.
Yes.
So,
even better.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go up with my buddy. I'm going with my friend. I went to see Guns N' Roses with him in 2016. Yeah, I saw Paul McCartney. And 2 days later, I saw Guns N' Roses. It was when Guns N' Roses. It was with Duff and Slash came back.
Yep.
So it was like that tour, and it was just fucking. It was a great show. But I went with my buddy Bill, and so then when I got into Maiden, I was like talking to him about it all along. I was like, hey, I bought 2 tickets, and I got the second one, hoping that you want to go. And he's like, fuck yeah.
See, that's a good, interesting topic I kind of would like to touch on. anytime you buy tickets, because like concerts, it don't happen in my specific area. You got to travel to go where you're going. And I don't have many friends in my area. So it's like anytime I buy tickets, I'll buy usually buy two, and with the hopes of I'll talk someone into going later on. And you know how many times I've missed concerts because nobody to fucking go with that, and I'm not gonna travel fucking, or they'll say they are going with you. Yeah, we're there, we're going, and then like the day of the show, it's something comes up mysteriously, and it's just like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that.
I tell you, man, I have a hard time going to concerts. Like, I go to them, I watch them, and after halfway through the set, I'm ready to fucking go. I'm like, fuck this. I'm ready to. I want to go home and jam. Like, I've seen enough. Like, I love them. So like, I was a Who freak when I was a kid. I was all about it. Loved the destruction and the crazy and being the loudest band in the world. And I have an uncle who used to run the Rainbow Bar and Grill. Okay. Lemmy and him were best friends. Lemmy basically lived there. So he was actually on the Lemmy. I think they had like a DVD tribute about him and all that, like a documentary or whatever. My uncle's was on there several times. They interviewed him. He helped get that statue made. But I had access to all that shit back then too, and I could have easily have called my uncle up, went down there and just hung out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill and hung out with, like my parents have been there many times. I never personally went there. I just stayed away from it. I don't know why. I just, I didn't like that kind of music. I had no fucking, didn't give a shit about hanging around with Vince Neil, I guess.
Yeah.
Some people like that shit. I'm not a fanboy. I don't give a shit. Like, I've hung out personally with Michael Jordan. I didn't ask for it. Like, I don't care. Not that I'm trying to be but I don't know. I just don't have it in me to like place somebody up. Like, I could appreciate anything that anybody does. Like, fuck yeah, dude, you're awesome, but it's like, is that person better? Like, people put people up on pedestals and, oh my God, it's Michael Jordan, and they get all weird. And to me, that's weird. Like, I don't fall into that, but it's kind of cool. I got a lot of autographs, Blackie Lawless. I actually got a jumpsuit from Iron Maiden. It was all German tags, embroidered somewhere in time on a Puma. It was a Puma sweatsuit. It was a sweatshirt and sweatpants, embroidered, and I wore the shit out of them. I should probably save them, but I had all kinds of shit, concert shirts. My uncle would send me all kinds of shit. I just wear it all, stuff I probably could have saved and might have been worth some. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, it was kind of a cool situation back then. And I'm sorry, man, I'm high and I got way off topic.
That's what we do around here.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the nature of the show.
At least we're still talking about music, though. Hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, usually, sometimes we go off on way further away from music than that.
Yeah, I guess my point there was just saying that goes to show you how much I disliked that kind of music back then, that I had a main fucking artery tapped into that world. Like, I could have just walked right in, got introduced to these people, hung out with these people eventually. Well, what do you do? I'm a drummer. Well, what the fuck? Come hang out. We got a band that, we got some guys looking for a drum, whatever, right? And you end up in a band like Guns N' Roses, or you end up, it's fucking crazy. But I didn't, I just fucking did not like that music, and I just didn't give a fuck. So I just didn't do it. I regret it though. I kind of regret it because I could have hung out with Lemmy at least.
That would have been cool. That would have been cool. But no, Sam had to fucking kill him for us. Thanks, Sam.
Fucking Sam.
Love you, brother.
Love you, brother.
Seriously, we do love you though, Sam. Yeah.
Stay the fuck away from Iron Maiden, Sam.
Yeah, so we're getting to the point of we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes. Do you guys got anything else you want to get out of the way?
Nothing I can think of other than not trying to knock over my whole setup here every time I move. Fucking this whole table rocks, and so I'm gonna knock over my dab rig onto my lap and burn my crotch.
Oh no.
I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but just wait.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. That'd be it could be much worse potentially than say spilling the hot coffee down there.
Oh.
Red hot dab rig. Ooh.
Yeah, that's a little bit hotter.
Yeah. So
yeah, because it's the coil.
Oh yeah, that's right. At least you're using electric, though, so it's not like burning red hot like when I fucking fire up my dab torch on it. So here's what we kind of touched on I earlier is like say like hardcore punk, how it went from like, you know, the way punk rock was when it started, say bands like the Sex Pistols, Ramones and whatnot, and then it started turning there. What's your guys' thoughts on stuff like that?
I mean, now we're talking about the Who again, right? Because now there's another one, right? That they always get lumped in as being punk rock. They're a punk rock fucking band. It's like, no, they're not. I do see where these punk rock guys drew from that element. They drew from the angst of the music, because most of the lyrics, if they're not about Tommy or one of his operas.
The Who are to punk rock that Black Sabbath is to metal, really, right?
Exactly, I agree.
Like I mean, you get the, you definitely have those elements, and there's the anti-establishment vibe, and like all of the shit that punk rock ended up getting known for. You see it all throughout the Who, but you also see it in fucking Dylan. You know, like you see it in like
the Rolling Stones,
other like. You know, fucking, there are people that credit Like a Rolling Stone as being the first ever punk rock song, which I don't really get it. But like, but just the fact that Bob Dylan, you definitely had those elements of the anti-establishment, the up-paced beats. It's just it was on acoustic guitars most of the time. You know, right. So like you turn that up, you crank that up, and then you fucking get angrier, you get punk rock.
Holy shit. Talk about revelations, eh?
I mean, that's how everything progresses, right? So what's rock? Rock is just fucking blues, man. I mean, 70% of Led Zeppelin songs aren't even Led Zeppelin songs. They're fucking blues songs that were played by like Sunhouse or something on some rickety ass fucking acoustic guitar, just him and the guitar, you know, singing like the Lemon song, right?
And then, well, here's another one. You take something by like Beethoven or Mozart, or even better would be like Niccolo Paganini, and you take those, and instead of on violins and stuff, you play those on Marshalls and Fenders through big amplifiers, Marshall stacks, and maybe throw a distortion pedal in the loop, and all of a sudden you've got metal.
Well, yeah.
And have something that's going to sound kind of similar to something like, say, an Iron Maiden with just the soaring guitars and
Metallica. I mean, Cliff Burton was a huge classical music fan, huge Beethoven fan. Beethoven, I think it was Beethoven, and you hear it in those bass lines. I mean, Orion is just beautifully composed.
Yeah,
and that bass solo, holy shit! Never got to play that live.
So there you go. Like, so right, so. Fucking when Maiden came popular, that's when fucking Metallica started coming up. All of a sudden, Seek and Destroy. What the fuck is that? Seek and Destroy. Oh, you haven't heard that yet? No. What is that? This band Metallica. Ooh, they sound scary. Let's hear it. You know, and it was like, oh man, these guys are kick ass. But then again, you know, I don't know. Some of these bands, like, I just lost taste. You know, I got used to Metallica's sound, and then, you know, Cliff passing away, and then the sound changed, the music changed, and it became cool and popular. And when it becomes cool and popular, it becomes usually not so cool and popular for the people that were there in the beginning, you know, and that's usually the suffering downfall of.
I actually read something about that, and it was the fact that like, and like a lot of the fans of Metallica, when Metallica was, you know, before they blew up, were this band that had this intimate connection with their fans. And like any band will, right? You're going to have that intimate one-to-one connection with the people that are first buying your albums and first coming out to your shows. So then when they start playing bigger shows, you're no longer in the mosh pit of this fucking hole in the wall. You're sitting in fucking seat 37, row 12 in section 208. And the band that you fucking loved and bled in their fucking mosh pits are now, 1,500 feet away instead of being 10 feet away. And now you're like, well, what the fuck, man? Where's my connection to you? You can't blame the band for other people loving them. Like,
right.
It shows the quality of the product that you originally believed in. Guys, I hate to end it there, but we're out of time for this one. We're going to get out of here. Michigan Bros Grow Show, they're up next. So head over to their YouTube channel and check them out. They're going to have a great show on tonight, as always. And Stony and Steve, brothers, great
guys. Thanks.
It was a great time. I'm going to go play some D&D. You all have an awesome night.
Sounds good.
Peace out, brothers.